Gonna look for that join request.
Hey guys, we are live and we are getting ready to have my mom join us shortly. So she's going to be sending out a request, and Hayes from the store is down there with her. And mom,
I think I am. Let's see.
okay,
Oh, okay.
all right,
Hold
come
on.
on, mom. Come
Wait,
on.
let's see. We gotta view requests. Accept. Come on. Hold on. We'll get it. We'll get
We'll
it.
be there. Oh,
Success.
okay, can you hear? Do you have Hayes next to you on the couch holding your hand?
She's right here.
Hey!
Hi. All right, guys. So this is my mom. Hey, Mom.
Hi. It's good to see you, Amy. I haven't seen you since Christmas.
I know. It's been since Christmas, so it's crazy how fast time goes by. Although you're gonna kill me, I have to go to the doctor at 4:15 today because when I called, I was like, I just want to make sure that it's been a year since my last appointment. And they were like, your last visit here was in September of 2019. So you
Yeah.
need, I don't even want to find out from the dentist when my last visit was. So anyways, Mom, thank you. Are you nervous?
No, not very.
Okay.
I'm pretty good.
All right, good. So what we want to talk about today is a couple different things. We want to talk about how Tibby was kind of, hey, hold on. Guys, can you shut the door? Do you mind? Derek. Can you shut the door? Sorry. All right.
We're trying to do it.
They're pretending like they're working out there, but and Matt sticking his
Just
finger.
touching the phone.
Yeah.
I was trying to get it so you could see your mom a little bit better.
Oh, I can see her.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Bye. Okay, so what we want to talk about is how Tibby was literally, very close to bootstrapped, right? I mean, as close as you can get to bootstrapped is like, as if unless I absolutely started with nothing, which that was not the case. So we want to talk about that. And then also just kind of from a family perspective, what it was like from your point of view working together. And then from a parent perspective, what was it that kind of made you believe in what I was doing and kind of jump into it all in? Because I have to say right now, if Gabriel or Charlie called me with the kind of requests that I called you for, I would hang up the phone.
Well, I might have hung up too if you were 22, but if you were, you were a little bit further along at that point.
So, all right. So I called you from Hong Kong. The year is 1997. What were you doing then when I called you? Like, what was your career?
Well, at that time, I had been, I'd gone into administration. I taught school for 25 years, and then in the last 5 years, I'd been an administrator at the high school. Well, I guess about the last 7 years, I had been an administrator, and I was an assistant principal, and I did discipline, and I did all the scheduling for the school. I was the registrar also. So we had 25.
I mean, in an interesting way, was a really solid job experience for what I called and asked you to do.
Was it?
Discipline,
Well,
like,
there was a lot, there was a lot of, over the years dealing with the public. I had that, but no retail, no shipping, nothing like that. So that was all new.
So I called you up and I said, I have some shipments. Can I send them to the house?
Right.
And can you just like repackage them and then send them back out? So what happened? Did a big truck
Okay.
pull up?
Well, I got home one day. I was expecting the
And
shipment.
you're still working at the school, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's a 60-hour-a-week job because after the school is over for the day, I also had dance duty, ball game duty, all that.
Right.
So anyway, I got home and this one day I was expecting the shipment to come in, and this guy calls me from the semi truck and said, I'm not sure we can get that into your neighborhood, but he figured out how to at least maneuver in front of my house. And I'm thinking, I thought these were just like going to come in a package from the UPS or something. No, they were in these gigantic boxes that were on pallets.
I bought a container.
Yeah.
Like I've been to the Container Store. I thought I knew what a container was, but a container, a container is those things like when you're driving along the highway and you see the big, gigantic, they're the things that go onto the back of a semi. That's a container. And that's what came to our house.
Yes. And so anyway, the truck driver was really nice and he unloaded everything and we brought it in and it sat all over my house. And I started opening up boxes of clothes and I'm thinking, this is so much more than I realized it was going to be. But
I feel like Grandma Wallen was there to help you, though. I mean, she was 80, but
88, but she was
counting.
She was good later on with the sewing, but
right.
But anyway, I got them all unpackaged, and then the next day when I went to school, I had them sitting in groups of style numbers, and the next day when I went to school, I asked some of the teachers that were good friends, hey, you want to come over and help me a little bit for a few hours tonight after school, and we'll sort these clothes out and fill these orders. And you had faxed me, quite a nice little pile of invoices to put in the boxes, except that there were no boxes. We had to bring all the paper boxes from school that the copy paper comes in. And so those were our first boxes. And it wasn't too bad because the orders were smaller orders. Well, then after, we got it all together, then it's like, okay, now what? Because it was before UPS stores and everything. So I had to load it in my car. And then the next morning when I left for school at 7 o'clock, I had to stop at the office store, and the lady helped me make a manifest for it, and that had to all be handwritten back then, and then she would make the tags for it, and then it shipped out, and that was the
then
first.
We were like, and once it shipped out, like it wasn't like done and dusted in this business.
I thought it was going to be.
Well, I remember you got a call and you called me later and you're like, Amy, someone called and they want something called an RTV. And I told them we do not do those, but they said we did do them. And that was, for any of you who don't know, an RTV is like an acronym for you're screwed. We want to return what you sent us.
Well, and the good thing was that a few weekends after the shipment came, we went to Atlanta because we didn't have a big bookstore here. Of course, that was before Amazon was doing books. And I literally bought every book on business that they had at Barnes and Noble. I was so excited because they had one called Shipping for Dummies. And I thought, that's me.
I know and that's what so many people write to me, that, when they're looking at starting something, they kind of believe that they have to have every box checked off ahead of time. And I think, the way that we did everything in these bite-sized increments made it so that we could kind of learn and fail in real time. Like, it's not like you quit school and you were like, okay, now I'm ready for the shipment to come in.
Right.
Like, you were at the school until the business got to a place where that didn't make sense anymore for you to be trying to do both things.
Right. Yeah, because in the beginning with just it was mostly just the two. Well, it was just the two
It
of
was
us.
the two of us.
And so anything that didn't have to do with sales came my direction, which was collections, shipping, receiving, all of those things that you would have different people be doing. But the receiving was into my house. And then we turned my spare bedroom. I bought some shelves from Home Depot and put them together, and that became the shipping room for probably about 6 months before we finally decided maybe we better move into a little bit more of a warehouse.
Well, and I mean, and in terms of like baby steps, like when you say move into a warehouse, that was when I was like, Mom, I got you a storage garage.
Yeah.
Like, there's no electricity.
Right. There was no
out of there before dark.
No air conditioning, and it was beginning to be June, and
On an
there was
island
no
off of
air
Georgia.
conditioning. We did have lights, though. We did have electricity, but that was another story. Yeah, it was,
Well,
it was actually about the size of a big garage, like a two.
Yeah.
It was like the size of a 2-car garage or 4-car garage, I guess. Maybe.
Well,
4
4 cars that are like smushed in there. I mean,
Yeah,
it was sure. It was,
maybe
when you
cars
see the
and
storage
bicycle
places
garage.
that have the big, and I, it was interesting because I read something, and it said that for a lot of the companies that go out of business, that one of the reasons why is because they take all their money in the beginning and they buy the biggest copier machine, the biggest tables, etc. And I think for us, like, we didn't even give you tables in that garage. Remember, you would have to use the boxes.
Yeah.
That
And actually the office, yes, we did not have tables. I thought about that. I forgot about that.
You used the boxes that the clothing came in, the big gigantic boxes.
Yeah, we'd turn them upside down to make, and then sort on top of them.
Because you were always bitching about my back. I keep bending over.
Well, by the way, you asked me earlier in an email how old I was when I was doing that, and I was 54 years old. Was when that started. But but anyway, the office was at home, and so I would have to go home and get the paperwork for everything because it would come in on my fax machine and my computer. And I remember the fax would always start going off about midnight, and our office is hooked to our bedroom. And at first I couldn't sleep, and Ken said, my husband said, I sleep like a baby because I know those are orders coming through, and cha-ching, cha-ching.
That's so true because, I mean, I was in Hong Kong, right? So I would get back in the middle of the
12
night.
12 hours.
And I remember just laying in bed, and when I would hear the fax machine going, I'd be like, don't get up. And then I'd have to go run in and see the order. And then I would have to tally it up and see how much it was. And
yep.
It
was exactly what I was doing on the other end, getting the invoices.
It was so exciting. But then there was that was the good stuff, right? And maybe it's gooder in memory than it was maybe in reality at the time. Because I remember you were really pissed about that truck and everything. But when did you quit your job and you were like, all right, Tibby's gonna work, I'm gonna be Tibby? How long did we wait before that happened?
When orders first came, I was finishing out, I think it was the 1998 or 98 maybe school year. And then we were going into the 98, 99 school year the next year. So I continued on working for both places that whole year. And at the end of June in 99 is when I did it full time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was a
Is that-
ton of work.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome.
I mean, because now I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, it was a
Wow.
big job because
It was
by
a very
then
big job.
there we had department stores we were dealing with and things like that. And the first thing after I started doing it full time was we got the warehouse in Redfern is when
Right.
we started that.
Yeah, that was, so now we've leveled up. We've invested in like a proper warehouse space with a little
Well,
office.
it was still just a room. It wasn't
Yeah.
like a warehouse, but we thought it was good for we were taking it in baby steps, which is a good thing.
That's a great thing. And I think that's one thing that I try and get people to remember who are starting out is I'm so glad we didn't try and go get like this big proper warehouse on the mainland or anything, because it was still really important that you be able to have a quality of life and be near home. And, and then Dad ended up opening an art gallery next door, and you guys were bringing the dog to work every day. And
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, it was.
Good. And you were getting the school teachers to help you pick and pack.
Yeah, by the time when we moved when we started doing what I think of as a real warehouse, then a lot of my friends had retired, and we had all those little jobs that take time, like tagging for the department stores, quality control, checking that. A lot of things had to be switched out for the department stores on hangers and that sort of thing.
It was such a big job, because if I hear it, like the timeline was founded the company in March of 97 in Hong Kong. That's when like the whole Tibi name, Octavia and I got together. That's when we came up with the idea. By that summer, we had already gone to Indonesia, created fabrics, created this line that was just like very tiny, 2 skirts, 2 dresses, and, a pair of pants. And then I took it to the US to see if I could sell it to people. And I showed it to stores, and I signed on 13 stores. So those were the ones that you handled like completely yourself, like out of our living room.
Right.
But then I remember by September of 98, that's when we had our like real breakthrough moment. So hold on a second, because I actually have one of the pieces here. This was like, Mom, if you remember, this is when we had
Yes.
done
And
all the
I still
slides.
yep.
Yeah,
I still have the map ones of
Those were
Paris and
that's
Hong Kong.
collectible. So the first logo was always green, which, we know that green is somehow our color always, but it was green. And so this was the collection that was like the unbelievable breakthrough. So everything up until then had been, maybe around 20 accounts. And then, and I had Neiman's and Saks, and, but it wasn't humongous orders, but then when I created this round of these skirts, that was when I went to the Coterie show. And I remember I had to leave the show because I went to go, and I found out I was pregnant. So I'd come from the US, was at the show, wasn't feeling well, went to the doctor, found out I was pregnant, came back. but we did almost $400,000 worth of orders at that
Yeah.
show, which is like, by the way, we've never done that since.
And by the way, wasn't that the show where your dad painted the stools with the flower logo on them?
and they didn't dry.
And they didn't dry.
That was actually an earlier show. That was when we got into the coterie for the first time, and that was when I hired that Linda Underwood, our salesperson, who I hired completely sight unseen. But I knew I didn't want to go with the showroom right away. I think, you know, pragmatically speaking, for people who are starting a company, it's really good to learn about the industry that you're going into, but you also have to recognize that whatever you're learning doesn't necessarily mean that those are the best practices or that that's going to be good for you. Because, you know, when I went out and looked at showrooms, I remember I was like, I don't get it. Like, why would I know marketing. I know, like, I can do the sales. I could, like, for me, it didn't make sense to use a showroom. And so I got a recommendation for a salesperson, and that was Linda.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Linda spent a ton of time together.
We did. We communicated all the time because, you know, she would always call me about orders and did I get it out and things like that. And since I was her main contact here, otherwise it was Hong Kong.
And it was kind of hard. Like, I remember a couple times if I ever get upset with you, you were like, now listen, Amy, Lynn. And that was hard to give directive, but was it, I mean, ultimately then Frank joined. So now your son-in-law joins the company. And
I remember, yeah, it was hard. There was, in the very, very beginning, I was thinking, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's my kid, you know, I can tell her what to do. But I didn't know anything about what we were doing. Of course, you didn't either. And so when you would give me a directive, I didn't really get upset with it. Maybe I did. It's been a long time, so it's 25 years ago almost. So, but I think that it was pretty easy to work together. I mean, I feel like that was not a big problem.
But see, I feel like Dad and Leslie's my sister, guys, I feel like they might say something differently.
Really?
Because I remember a few years in, like at the dining room table, and we got into like a pretty heated, oh yeah, Mom. Yeah, because you were all like, you don't appreciate me. And I just,
Man.
and you know that I'm not sensitive, but you know that I was just like, Mom, this is business. And you were all.
That was a good point too. And we did that was one of the main things that the phrase that would be used a lot is, this is not personal, it's business.
Yeah.
And I did, you know, finally lock that into my head, that it was not personal. It's not that you're not doing a good job, but you need to work more hours, Mom.
But I mean, listen, it was probably a good thing that Dad and Leslie are both trained therapists, because they were excellent mediators at the dinner table.
Well, I remember I was leaving. We had a trip planned for Europe, and I remember, you know, we'd had it planned for a long time, and I called Frank and told him I was leaving. He said, I've never worked with anyone who leaves for a month for Europe.
Yeah. I mean,
but it was in between shipments. You know, we didn't have as many shipments back then.
Yeah, you didn't have that 11, 12-month bullshit system that like crushed us for a while there, for sure. and that was, you know, that was crazy when we started to get to those levels. I mean, because I think the good thing is when you can sit back and laugh, but it was certainly, you know, certainly I wouldn't describe anything here as easy.
Yeah.
But I think that you can, you know, really taking it day by day. I remember we leaned on a lot of local connections. That's when I was really happy to be from a small town and know that the UPS instructor, that you taught him science, and that you taught the banking guy sex ed, you know, like
It
that
was
was,
that was one of the main things, like the connections to the banking, the Bailey Boys, which is a high-end children's clothing, and they had been doing shipping, and they were good friends of mine, and they were the ones who really helped me out with, you know, sourcing things. I just went to them and said, okay, how do you do boxes? And they told me, how do you know, do you get insurance on this? Who's
yeah,
the best? And there were lots of times that we couldn't use UPS or FedEx, and we needed to use a trucker, and I didn't know anything about finding a trucker, you know.
yeah.
That was that they were so helpful with that, and local sourcing is just wonderful. I mean,
Well,
it really gave us an advantage.
yeah, and I want to like preface this, guys. Like when I say, like when mom's like, "Oh, the banking connections," this is not Succession here. Like, you know, this is like a small island. What mom, like the first house, it was like 10,000 for the property, 20,000 to build the house. Like we are not
Yeah,
talking.
correct.
This is not Succession here by any stretch.
Right.
And these are, you know, obviously parents who both were in the school system. So it really was, though, about having a community around you who would all rally. And, you know, it was nice. And when I remember going in and we were packing to get things out in a pinch, and it was like Mrs. Wright, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Carithers, like
Yeah.
all my school teachers were packing things up.
Yeah, it was, and they were so good. We used to say the mean average of our warehouse worker, the mean educational average was at least a 2 years past your master's degree.
Yeah, they all had,
They
had to have
didn't
a
make
doctorate.
mistakes. They were so
You needed a
good.
doctorate.
What'd you say?
You needed a doctorate to
Yeah,
ship
your
it to me.
doctorate. We had 3 people that had their doctorate.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. So, what do you think was the most rewarding thing that you've had, like leaving school and coming, like, was there, I mean, I'm assuming that it was super rewarding in the end.
Well, it was, but you know, first of all, I've always loved fashion anyway.
Mhm.
And it was just a whole different ball. I mean, it's like jumping into a whole different world.
Yeah.
And that in itself, and learning about, I learned so much the first 3 or 4 years, just
Mhm.
unbelievable. But also, the big thing was that it always made me feel good when we were together as a family, that I knew what my daughter and my son, and later on my other daughter, were talking about. That was a
Mhm.
part of it. And that was a lot of fun. And then building up, you know, you're always proud of your kids when they do things right. And, you know, it was kind of an ego trip too, to see the clothes be out there and think, my daughter's dressing this person, you know. We'd get an order from, I remember one time, I think it was Kristen Dunst, that it was
Mhm.
one of the first ones that we got an order from, and I was like, oh, we're
So
dressing
cool.
somebody famous.
And it was really coming a long way, because I remember in the beginning we would try and save money on boxes. You would like drive behind the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, you told me, just don't get anything with lettuce. Don't leave any lettuce in the box. I gave up on that pretty quickly because the ones that Winn-Dixie weren't very good.
But you know what? I have to say, in hindsight, that was so eco-friendly. We were
Yeah.
so ahead of the curve on sustainability. You know, I mean,
we
perfect.
we did a lot of sustainability in the beginning. We
Yeah.
reused everything.
But you know, I think also staying small and independent, when people do talk about sustainability, it's like we're sustainable because why would I be anything else? You know, you can't be wasteful in life. And when it is your own money, when you are like it's all being recirculated amongst the employees, like you want to be smart in how you spend it. Why would I want to spend it on, you know, outrageously expensive cardboard packaging and excess lighting and all that, you know? For sure.
Yeah. That is.
So you kind of retired a few years ago, but Hayes still drags you back into the store.
I haven't worked in the store now for over a year, but I kind of semi-retired and kind of ran kind of a circuit. I'd go check the warehouse and but the people we have that are working are so doggone good that they just seem to, take care of everything. And it's to my satisfaction the way they take care of it. But yeah, I stepped back and then permanently pretty much stepped back at when COVID started. That's really when the big step back was. And I missed that. I missed the connection there, but I feel like I'm a part of it when we do special events and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things too, that when you are growing a business, it's really recognizing when you do need to bring in the real expertise, because there's a tremendous amount of learning on the job. And then at some point you only know what you know and you don't know what you could never not know. And so I think like for us, one of the biggest things was when we hired Sandra in the warehouse, right? Mm-hmm. Like she came in and was just such an expert in shipping and how to facilitate that. And so I think, bringing in some real experts in their field and then putting, reshuffling people so that you can learn where their contribution is going to be better put,
Right.
And it's
I remember even when you were talking about using local people's advice and everything. I remember Jim Bailey, who ran the Bailey Boys, was telling me how to set up my warehouse because I was packing things completely differently than I should have been. I was taking each order and packing each order separate instead of checking the, it shouldn't have been done that way.
I know. I mean, like Amazon was not going to send any spies down to steal secrets from us. I know and that made sense to me too at the time, the way that we were packing it. And I mean, so for long-term growth, like crazy inefficient. But that's okay because that was all, again, like part of the process, right?
Yeah, it was funny because the first time we put the inventory the way that we should have had it in the beginning, it was so funny because we went through and filled the orders and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like,
so much easier. Like the light bulb goes off. I think the most stressful part for me, is that you had to be in the firing line if there were ever any comments like on fit.
Well, yeah, because people would call. A lot of times they would call the warehouse, but they would call the, or the stores would call the warehouse, the shippers,
Yeah, and you don't want to shoot the messenger, but
no.
I mean because remember the time like the dresses that had the really sharp pointy boobs?
The cone boobs.
The cone boob dress. I mean, that was, I mean, I remember just being crumpled up in Hong Kong when you called and you were like, these dresses are giving cone boob. And I was like, no, they're not. And then you were like, Amy, Madonna, like, go look, go. And they were. And I remember just crying so hard. And Frank was like, you'll make it through this. Like, it's going to be a financial hit, but
It was yeah, and that's one of those things where you did pull yourself up by the bootstraps, because it happened with a style that was one of our best sellers that year. And we did it in a lot of fabric colors. And I just remember when we realized that we had already shipped most of it, and I had one of the girls, somebody called and said that they weren't fitting correctly. So I had one of the girls in the office try it on, and I was like, oh my gosh. And
well, that would piss me off so bad half the time too, because sometimes though you'd be like, you know, Mrs. Wright thinks this top is too short, and I'm like, Mrs. Wright's our school principal. Like, what? Now I'm getting, which that's really hard, because in the beginning, you know, when you are developing something, you're trying to figure out like who your customer is, what they're at, you know, and then I'm like hearing like what Mrs. Wright, I mean, like, I love you, Mrs. Wright, no offense, but at the time in my 20s in Hong Kong starting this, you weren't my demo, you know, but it's like you're trying to gauge all that feedback. And then I'm telling you, she's not my demo. And then you're taking it personally because you're like, she's my friend, you know, but
one of the things that happened, I guess I go ahead and tell it, but we had,
what are you going to tell?
This one time we got a shipment, and it was these blouses for one of the department stores. And they, of course, everything came in plastic. And well, after the first couple rounds, then they put everything in plastic. And when we opened the box, we're like, what?
Oh, the cat pee?
Yes. And we finally figured out it smelled like something you can't deny, cat pee. And fortunately, it didn't get
cat
on
pee
the
has a
blouses,
very distinct
but
scent.
it was on the plastic bags. And so I called our liaison with the factory, and she said, I think it was Aaliyah at the time, and she said, oh yes, I went to that factory. They did have cats there. Well, they like the Neiman Marcus blouses.
They pissed all over the Neiman Marcus top. But stuff happens.
We had to get them. Then we had to go get bags made so that would fit those blouses, so it didn't look too weird. But fortunately, it didn't get on the actual fabric.
We've had scorpions in the boxes.
Oh yes. A lot of us had scorpion bites.
Snakes in the warehouse.
We had snakes. We've had at least 3 or 4 snakes that I know of, probably more since I'm not in the warehouse anymore, but we had about 3 or 4 snakes that would be traveling down the walkway between the boxes.
Then I did that back in the day. I would do all that stuff for Anthropology, and I did those dresses where the cherries came in the wrong color, so we bought like 1,000 Pantone markers and had everyone coloring in the cherries. We had that stupid hideous shoe that time that had the
don't even talk to me about those shoes with those jewels. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and I had the fork and the jewels all came out, and you guys had to use chopsticks to put the jewels.
And we had to buy special glue, and
masks.
everybody was going, "Oh, I've got such a headache from doing this." Those were all of my teacher friends were out there gluing the jewels.
And then I was so cheap. I'm like, okay, Mom, make them work for 10 hours, and you can give them a piss shirt. Give him a piss shirt in return. Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, I think that, you know, what I want to talk about just quickly is like, as a parent, I think that when I look back at those janky little drawings that I showed you and Dad before I was moving to Hong Kong, and it was true, like at that time I was 28, I had worked for Ogilvy Advertising, I'd worked for American Express. But when I showed you guys those horrible little drawings and told you my idea, you guys didn't act like I was crazy. Like if I saw those drawings right now, I would be like, no, no, go get a job in banking. Like I would have said no. But you guys didn't. Like how was that hard? Were you laughing behind my back or?
No, never. No, no. I think that we just, I don't know, we always encouraged you to use your artistic abilities anyway. And, you know, your dad's had a lot of winners and he had to have a lot of losers to,
Mhm.
you know, as an artist to do all of that.
Yeah.
So it was something that we always knew that you landed on your feet. You know, you did a lot. You always worked, and a lot of times that's where the hesitance would be if I had somebody I was going in the morning and shaking and going, "You better get up." But you were never that way. You were always on task, and so that I wasn't disturbed by that at all. Not at all. I thought
I
it was
think that
great.
I think that is the thing about taking it day by day, because I also think like, you know, we were fortunate in the fact that, you know, we did not have a lot of money growing up. We had as much money as two people in a school system would imply,
Mm-hmm.
working in a school system would imply. And I think that, but the fact is, like, you and Dad just had your 55th year wedding anniversary.
Yep.
Um,
Last weekend.
yeah, we grew up in a very safe place, you know, like the minute I did something wrong, I always knew someone was going to rat me out, and they did. Um, so, you know, that was like cell phone check-in before cell phones was just people, nosy people on the island, right? And so for us, like, to know that if the worst case scenario is that like you fail and you go and you live on an island and you have this really good life roasting oysters or something, like that just never, failure didn't seem to be such a horrible thing if it were to happen, you know? And I think that's where, but again, like I'm married to a husband where his idea of failure, you know, his mom was in Auschwitz for 6 years. They escaped a war-torn country. You know, he has a very different concept of what it means to kind of be like at ground zero and starting back again, you know? So we were lucky in that our ground zero was just quite a simple life, which I really value having had that. But I think never really overextending ourselves and kind of living with cautious hope for the future, you know, and what we should invest in, for us, I think ended up serving us really well.
Yeah.
You know, if we were going to fall,
Yeah.
it wasn't too far. And I also think too, when you're, you know, for any of you guys who write to me and you are doing family businesses and everything, I think you have to really know up front how far you are really willing to, how much you would be willing to sacrifice for your business. And I think we always knew that if anything were to happen with our relationship, that the business is the thing that would die, not the relationship.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that if anyone is going into a business with a spouse or a relative, you have to be very clear on what your priorities are with regards to that, because I joke, like, we did have those fights at the dinner table. It was stressful. And
well, we we'd get stressed talking about things, and then we'd always say, okay, no more
Right.
You know, you're only here for the week. We're not going to do Tibby Talk this week
Yeah.
because 90% of Tibby Talk would be the bad things, not the good things. So,
Right.
you know, we just quit doing that, and it did work to our advantage to do that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
use the Tibby Talk was when you were sitting and you were actually focusing on the business, and then it was a business.
See, and this is why I need Frank to like, he'll come in at like night and we're watching a movie and he's like, did you look at the net margins this month? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it now. And he's like, if not now, when? And I'm like, between 10 and 6 in an office. Like, no, not on the couch when I'm watching, you know, whatever. Like, no.
Yeah.
And
But
then he wants to come in and talk to you about it though. Because I very distinctly remember, and this is the one time when it went too far. I remember leaving the house to go give birth to Charlie. And I remember us having such an intense conversation between me and you and Frank about inventory levels. And I hated that I remember that so much. Like, as I'm getting ready, like I should have just been in the moment. I was about to give, you know, and that's what I remember. But whatever.
Yeah.
Water under the bridge. Clearly, I don't.
I think my takeaway from the business, and one of the things that made it a successful relationship, though, is back again to the fact of taking it in baby steps all the way, and not, I mean, there could have been times that you might have, I hesitate when I see somebody, or I'll be reading about somebody and they got this gigantic order from some company, and I'm thinking, I hope they're ready for it.
Do it.
Because that you put that money out there to make it and everything, it's still not a guarantee that they're going to buy it, not return it, or something.
Yeah, for me, that was the best advice. Was someone told me earlier on, they're like, do not ever send out a shipment that you can't afford to eat in its entirety if it doesn't get paid.
Yeah. Because
it won't. I mean, think how many companies we had, and then that showroom in London that stole all that money from us.
Yeah, yeah.
That was horrible. Like, there were really, yeah, you got to be able to ride those ups and downs. Ew. Yeah, lots of bad stuff has happened too. So, but we'll just think about the good, because, I mean, Mom, I wish you were 20 years younger and running around now and like not off, you know, traveling constantly with Dad, because I feel like it's one of the best times we've ever had in the company. Like, it feels so invigorating not to be working with any of those U.S. department stores, to have so much creative freedom. It just feels really good. And Hayes is Hayes next to you still?
He's right there.
But even like Hayes, how long have you been with Tibby?
About 14 years.
Okay,
and
so you
before
started
that, when she was in junior high school, her mother she would come in and she and her mother would shop. I mean, it was just, this goes back so long. And then she went off to college, and her mom would buy clothes to take to Alabama. And then when she got out of college, she came and interned, or while she was in college, I guess she interned, and then came right after college again. I mean, and there are several people in our company that was the story. Hayes is one of the longest ones, you know, that we've had the longest, but they worked just babies and stayed with us. It was really nice.
Well, and it's even like, I mean, for Hayes, like, I mean, my gosh, her job she's been through so many iterations, and now it's morphed into something.
She could do anything.
Seriously, I mean, it's such a wild west right now. So, And what I mean by that is I'm as excited as I was in those very first years. It feels like there's a lot of unknown ahead of us, but that's okay. You know, that's definitely okay.
Yeah.
So, you guys, does anyone out there have any other questions? Or someone says they'd love to be part of our team. Oh, you can move down to St. Simon's. Hey,
Yeah.
an amazing salesperson, stylist, etc. Like here
Here's
she
Harry.
comes. Hi. I wish I was there.
I know. It feels nice out today too.
Oh, shut
Yeah,
up.
beautiful. Right. It's beautiful right now. It's
Freezing here.
supposed to rain pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't care. It's like 3 degrees here.
Oh.
So good for you guys. All right. Well, Mom, do you have anything else to say? Anything?
No, I will say this. I have no regrets. So those of you who are starting businesses and trying to rope your family in, yeah, it's a good thing. And it's, you know, if you can't trust your mom, who can you trust?
Totally. And that's, I mean, someone just asked, like, how long did it take to, like, set those boundaries on Tibby Talk?
Oh, probably. Well, they never completely 100% went away, but I would say we, in the probably the last 10 years that we were, it was the first 10 years we talked a lot of Tibby Talk. And then it kind of went, you know, we got, so we didn't do that.
But here's the thing that I do tell people is that as passionate as I am about Tibby, I would also, like, I wouldn't shut up either about an ad campaign when I was at Ogilvy or, you know, at American Express if I was figuring out a way to sell something, you know, a financial product or whatever. Like, if you're a passionate person, a lot of times, like, it's hard to switch off no matter what, whether it's your own company or whether you're working for someone else.
Right. Yeah,
it's hard to
because
switch
it's what you do. And most of the time, especially if you're completely enveloped with the business, it's hard to come up with many other things to talk about around the dinner table sometimes. And so you kind of keep falling back on the thing that you know best.
That's true. But we have lots of other good stories that will come out in a book one day. My God.
You better watch it. I don't want to have to sue you.
I know. You know what I'm talking. I mean, well, like real quickly. I mean, how about that one person when they left? Like they had logged like 90 hours a week playing solitaire on their computer. Like, oh my! Remember that one? Remember that one that someone called? Hey Hayes. Someone had called Dad, and they were like, I think your store manager isn't wearing pants. Oh my gosh.
She was.
It was so inappropriate.
She was wearing pants.
It wasn't me at the time either, just so you
It
all
was
know.
not you and it wasn't Laura.
But Hayes
To be
was
clear.
there.
Or Laura. It was not me or
It
Laura.
was not Laura.
I was there.
We did.
Oh my
We
gosh.
got 2 calls about that. How the blazer came down over and it looked like she had on no pants.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Well, I'm not convinced it wasn't the case, but anyway. All right. Just saying. But we got 26 years of, or 25 years of history, so you guys can't go back and figure out who it was.
Exactly.
All right, Mom. It was so good catching up.
It was good
I
to
know
see you
everyone-
too.
Good
Bye.
to see you, Hayes. Thank you for like pressing the buttons.
You know, we're good. Judy and I work well together on that. We're fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Love you guys. Love you,
Bye.
Mom.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
What do I press?